Bro, hey. ya beauty kata
Panorama Mascara by L'Oréal Paris. With its multi-level bristle brush, catch every single lash. For 1.4 times bigger looking eyes.
See life in Panorama because you're worth it.
From here, possibilities are everywhere. From taking first steps here, to beginning your own wealth journey here. From backing global trade ambitions here, to delivering on that promise here. That's why we're here, in the world's most dynamic markets. A bank that connects potential to possibilities. So, where will you go from here?
All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation continues even during the break. It's youth and taxes. We are linking it to the goodies from billions in the US by the Ruto trip. And also, but you wanted to mention something, Nathaniel, in response to what Philip was saying before I bring in Biko.
Yes. So first of all, if you look at what the president has been able to do even in the United States as we speak, when he arrived, he went to address an audience at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library, and he gave a very wonderful speech in his first day in the U.S. Later on, we saw him speaking about the issue of debt that we are discussing here. He was very vocal about it when he was addressing the Black Congressional Caucus. He asked the MPs in the U.S. Congress to consider putting legislation forward on the issue of the debt that is advanced to African countries and especially Kenya. And he was urging them to consider putting the legislative proposal in the format of a single-digit interest rate for every money we borrow from multilateral institutions. This is very key because Kenya and many other African countries are accessing international financial resources at double digits, maybe 12%, when other countries are accessing the same resources at a single digit, maybe 2%, 3%. So this the president clearly put forward. And this has a direct relationship with how the Kenyan taxes are being done, because we have to pay our taxes. And we have to pay even the obligations, the debt that we have accumulated from the previous regimes. The second point I wanted to make that Philip has raised consistently, it is not an issue of looking east or west. It is an issue of looking at Kenya's interest. So, for example, if you're having a conversation with the Chinese, for example, or Russia, or any other geopolitical power, it is not about Kenya has now adopted a look east or west policy. We are supposed to look at our own interest as a country. So in these conversations, and these are very, very tricky conversations when you are engaging other big players in the world stage, you have to be, first of all, you have to pick the agendas, the topic for discussion, because it has to be mutual. It has to be mutual interest when you're discussing with these superpowers. So the president has been able to navigate this very carefully in all the conversation we've seen him engaging in. So I wanted to just urge Philip that it is not as simple as ABCD as he's looking at it, because the moment you're in that seat, the responsibilities are much higher. Okay. The information the president has in terms of this trip, it is well prepared in advance. He is trying to undermine the significance of the state visit that has taken a place for a very long time, and we are supposed to appreciate. For example, we've only dwelled on one piece of project. You've seen the 23 billion that has been allocated to the affordable housing. That's a very big quantum leap in terms of the financing of the affordable housing.
But there's also housing levy being taxed.
There is a housing levy that is being taxed.
So we don't necessarily need this, because we are able to build on it.
It is going to fill into the deficit, because remember the ambitious plan is to have 1 million houses every year.
There's been no clear indication of what the deficit really is.
We said we could raise this money from Kenya.
Because it's a continuous taxation.
So if we can be able to raise this money from Kenya, so we should not accept any support from outside.
Because the question is, why then do we need a loan that will still repay when we're still taxing our own people to build the same houses? Because this does not directly translate to the relief to the mwananchi. There will be no conversation that because we access this loan now, so the housing levy will be reduced for now.
That is true. That is very true. But also remember, there is an ambition. If you look at the plan, the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, the plan is to have 1 million houses every single year. So if we were to fail to achieve that target, we have to have support from all angles. We have to generate revenues internally. We also have to get support from our development partners. So it is very key, if we're able to get it from a 360-degree view, to fill these ambitious targets. So this is very progressive on the deals that have been taking place here.
Okay, Biko.
Trevor, I think as young people, we need to be honest with ourselves first and foremost. I disagree with him vehemently because, one, allow me to touch on the housing issue. We don't need US to give us money to do the housing because even the money we've raised currently, we're not using it. The government is actually investing that money into treasury bills and bonds. So the question is, why are you collecting money from people by force to go invest it into treasury bills and bonds, and who is the beneficiary for that interest? So we do not have the structures for the housing levy to actually be utilized on the ground. Number two, Kenya's economy, we cannot be able to produce 1 million houses. That is impossible. We need to be very, very honest with what our capacity is. But looking overall over the visit and the element of taxation, as I've said before, the biggest issue, the biggest question that we should be asking is, how is Kenya benefiting from this? We've seen the U.S. interest being taken care of. The U.S., in terms of geopolitics, the U.S. has positioned itself in the Horn of Africa, East Africa aspect. As Philip said, our president is a master of doublespeak. When he's in Africa, he dons on countersuits and speaks about Pan-Africanism very well. But the moment he leaves the African space and goes to the US and other countries, puts on, a very beautiful suit. So our president is a double-speak person. And it becomes, when you have such a leader, it becomes very difficult to actually tell which direction we're actually heading to. If you look at our relationship as a country with other African countries, it's very bad. For the first time in our history, we're not relating very well with other African partners. We've seen what's been happening between us and Uganda. It's taken a lot of many players to bring us back on the table with Uganda to discuss. Look at how South Africans view us. Look at how Nigerians...
But the president himself was here and they discussed and agreed on certain trade deals that were stalled for the longest time.
I'm privy to what happened behind the scenes. For Museveni to come here and for him to meet the president and sign the deal, it's because we had fallen apart. Many African presidents are actually calling us doublespeak because we say this on African stage, then we say that on international order. Why do we need to go and beg money from World Bank? If we can only be able to fix governance in Africa, fix the element of corruption, we don't need anyone to give us money. When we talk about borrowing money from a single digit to a double digit in terms of interest, as an African, I'm asking myself, do I not have the credibility in my own institutions that can lend money across Africa? When you look at how US invests money, for example, one of the reasons why American money never goes to waste, and even all this money is going to be accounted for, is because most of this money is pension from American police and other civil servants. So they're investing their money in Africa. It's working for them. They will get interest. What about us as Africans putting up our own institutions, using our own pension funds to do these projects? I believe we have the capacity to achieve this. What we lack...
Wouldn't that lead to increased taxation?
No.
Where do you get the money from?
Currently, if we were to look at our pension laws and how pension funds invest in Kenya or across Africa, we can be able to have a reform aspect and ensure that money in the pension funds can actually be used to fund this project. The circle movement in Africa is actually very big. What we lack is prudent management. What we lack is proper corporate governance. And for me, I believe the problem we have is incompetent leadership, corrupt civil servants, and a lot of wastage. How much have we used? We have 917 million in the US, Kenya, to strengthen the police service. This trip of 4 days is gobbling up 500 million. How much can that 500 million do for our people, for our teachers? So for us, what we should be having as a discussion is, what kind of leadership do we have? Is it the right leadership to take Kenya and Africa ahead, or is it going to put us in more debt?
Okay. CPM, you're the numbers guy, and I like that you stay away from the political side of it. But are we able to really restructure in such a way that we can be self-reliant? Is that even possible when you look at the numbers?
Absolutely. Very difficult, and I think when you look at very many countries across the world, not just in Africa or the developing countries, I mean, whether you're looking at the US, Japan and all that, they all have debt. Every country, almost every, maybe we might have a few exceptions, but they all have debt. I think the main question is our utilization of the debt that we get. And I think in this country, what we have done in the past, and I'm sure we might be benefiting from this, is that we took a lot of debt to work on our infrastructure. We have a lot of loads that have been put up by previous, maybe the previous regime. And that was mainly financed through debt. And that is how we have found ourselves to be in the situation that we are in, that we have taken a lot of debt, and we've had the IMF, the IMF had to come through to rescue us from defaulting, the Eurobond. Basically, maybe we are talking about debt relief situation, maybe they would actually consider that to have been one. We were almost headed to where Ghana and Zambia went to in terms of defaulting. So they came in hard and they refinanced part of that, and just to ensure that we do not default. So debt per se, I would say, a bad thing. Even at an individual level, I know most people will still take debt. The key issue is accountability. Is the government able to account for the money that we are getting as debt? In terms of, if we take debt and we say we are putting up this plant, or we are probably developing an industrial zone, can we actually see the results of that then coming later at a certain point? If we are looking at the major infrastructure projects, and this is the reality we are looking at, the capacity, because when I look at the current debt levels, we are about 9 trillion. 9 trillion. Now we are getting to 10 trillion. And these are very huge debt that we are carrying. We don't have a lot of capacity to finance huge infrastructural projects. The only way out is going to the PPP, where the private players will come in, they will finance these projects, and they will get into an arrangement where they will recoup their investments. The key thing, and I think I will repeat this, is that the government must ensure that we do not commit to provide certain guarantees that will actually maybe not reflect in this debt, but in the event that there's a deficit, we have to finance. So how these are crafted will be important, but I think we also have to make sure that, because otherwise a country is only financed through two main sources of income, tax or debt. Literally, grants, I think as a country we are getting very minimal when you look at the grants we are getting, because we are now considered to be not a low-income country, so we are not getting a lot of grants. So we either get a lot of taxes, and I think Kenyans are feeling the pain, and why we are discussing this, or the debt. So there has to be a balance, and I think proper management and accountability is key in ensuring that Kenyans appreciate what is being done out there in terms of the government going to discuss with other partners on how to support us.
Are we overtaxed from the numbers perspective?
Very interesting, Trevor, and I think a very interesting question. Are we overtaxed? Maybe it will depend with how you look at it. There's no doubt that over the past, last year and this year, we have seen an aggressive approach in terms of new taxes coming into force or being proposed. This was not the case in probably in the previous regime. Now, the question is, when you look at the various taxes that are being introduced, maybe the question we need to ask ourselves, is it the right time to introduce these taxes? And I think we will probably get into the taxes such as the motor vehicle tax that is being proposed. The question is it the right time to do this, or can we wait a little bit longer until probably we have developed a proper public transport system, after which you can say, if then you opt to still use your private car, then you should be able to pay this tax that then facilitates you to move with your private car. I think the timing is the issue here, and the multiplicity of taxes. And in addition to the main conventional taxes, corporate income tax, VAT, we have very many other levies. We are talking of the affordable housing levy. And I was analyzing just the number of levies that we have in this country, and there are many. You start with the import declaration fee. You look at the railway development levy. You were coming in last year, we have the affordable housing levy. We have the export promotion levy. We are now proposing a motor vehicle circulation levy. We are proposing an eco levy. I think we are getting to a situation where probably it's becoming difficult to work around the taxes, and we are now getting to the direction of levies. But we are forgetting that these levies will still feed into the cost of the goods that are being produced, which might affect the competitiveness of goods that are being exported out of this country. So looking at an overall level and ensuring that we harmonize, that we do not get into, very many levies that are, not working towards the goals that we are working towards, progress, let's say, promoting manufacturing that Biko is talking about. We really need to look at this, and the timing is key. Okay. We really cannot afford to be increasing taxes every other year.
Okay. Wanjika, we overtaxed. Let's get into the taxation space now. even in relation to the Finance Bill 2024?
I'm thinking what is happening is that we have a smaller tax base, and what the president's looking at is to expand it so that the burden isn't just carried by a certain particular group of people.
There are those who argue the opposite, that instead of expanding the tax base, the people who are the 20% who are financing 80% of the budget are being taxed more. Because it is a fact that the 20% of the people are financing 80% of this.
Yes. And for me, I always look at it in a positive way, expanding the tax base, because it makes people more cognizant of decisions that they make when they choose leaders. At the end of the day, that person who comes to ask for your vote, what does